Cool, Matt's here. And then, of course, Rex Bear. Rex, what's up, brother?
Hey, not much, just enjoying this beautiful day in the studio. Nice weather outside, no air conditioning in here. It's awesome. It's like an indoor sauna.
Awesome, man. Well, as I told everybody, I wanted to make just a quick announcement. Both the Leak Project and Decoders of Truth, from an awareness standpoint, man, subscription is off the chart. Rex is now close to 110,000 subscribers. If you're a member of the Decoders of Truth and you're not a subscriber to the Leak Project on YouTube, what are you waiting for? Stop it. I'll put a link in the ongoing discussion here so that you can sign up, but you should be literally, I'm pretty sure everybody in the group has a subscription, but if you're not, what are you waiting for? Rex has amazing interviews and content that he puts out. I mean, prolifically. Rex is the most prolific content producer. I can't keep up with him, but please sign up to his channel. And then, of course, the Decoders of Truth, as many of the mods in the group know. Thank you guys, by the way, for everything you do. Everybody's still working unpaid. We're close to 14,000 subscribers. So very, very clearly, a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today, going into the age of Aquarius, people are consciously waking up, and they are coming to groups like DOT, Decoders of Truth, and, of course, the Leak Project. So with that said, guys, I know we have a lot of topics. I'm just going to kind of start talking or let it segue into what you guys want to talk about. So let's go.
I think before we jump into that, it was neat what we talked about off air, Jay, when you brought up how you went and saw the film Wonder Woman and you had that synchronicity moment that resonated with you. I think you should share that because that's awesome.
Okay, sure. And this is going to go kind of in, and Matt, you can jump from here and take the topic away. But so I went and saw Wonder Woman last Thursday. I've been in Phoenix shooting video for one of my businesses, and I decided to go because it was really close to my hotel. They had a 10:30 advanced screening. It was the night before it opened, worldwide. And I was 20 minutes into the movie, and I literally had this massive, just overwhelmed feeling of oh my God, I want to pause this movie and reach out to Matt and reach out to Gerald and reach out to Rex and everybody in the Decoders of Truth. And of course I couldn't because, it's a live movie and stuff, but I mean, it was incredible. It was so intense. And then I did reach out to Matt. He knows this. He has it on his text message. I sent him a text literally in the middle of the night and said, Matt, you've got to see Wonder Woman. This is insane. And then that was it. And then I went full blown into work and stuff. And I didn't reach out to anybody else, not even Gerald, not you, Rex, or anything. But subsequently Rex did a video yesterday, and I watched it this morning, and I was shaking because everything he said is exactly the same, synchronicity feeling that I experienced when I was in the theater by myself watching Wonder Woman. It was mind blowing. I was literally shaking. And it's funny too, because I had no understanding of what Rex did other than what Matt wrote in this little message group that the three of he and I had of hey, I watched your video, Rex. It's pretty cool. Good job. That's all I knew. But then when I watched it, I was just Monica was with me this morning, and she's like, we got to go to the gym. We got to go to the gym at 7 o'clock. And I'm like, babe, I got to finish watching this. It was so good. So kudos to you. But yeah, dude, I mean, let's keep it right there. I mean, wow. The Anunnaki working behind the scenes in Hollywood is pretty obvious at this point.
That's a powerful story. And, it's interesting because you can even go back to the 1980 film Flash Gordon and the Anunnaki synchronicities in that 30-year-old film. Actually, even older than that, it's mind-boggling. 37 years old, and it's all over. And it's even got the Antichrist archetype, Ming, the merciless. He looks virtually identical to Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan. You've got the symbols and the demigods. You've got the Ajiji, the bird people. You've got the swamp people. You've got the elf people. And it's all right there. Then you've got the transhuman archetype. It's pretty fascinating. 37 years old. And that's based on comics that go back into the 30s and the 40s. And, it's incredible how art mimics reality and reality mimics art. And oftentimes, for example, you're looking right behind me, and just want to give a quick shout out to Brady Shally, Shally. If you go check her out on Instagram, I'll leave a link as well in this. She painted these incredible pieces of art. And, another synchronicity moment, the way that I discovered her and these paintings was literally, I start doing these readings on Inanna/Ishtar. And then I'm like, wait a second, is that Wonder Woman? And then I'm like, wait a second, I've got a painting of Wonder Woman that I just got. Right. And it's like, okay, does there get to be a point where synchronicities and coincidence you can clearly tell they're two different things?
That's so awesome, Rex. And I think what's the biggest takeaway we have to look at here is all these science fiction movies, right? We have this idea of, well, here's reality that we have all around us, and then here's science fiction. And oh yeah, isn't that amazing to think about all these things in space and flying around and all these gods and all these things they show. And the more you look at truth, and then the more you go back and watch these things, the more you see almost every single one of these more mainstream movies that's been made in the science fiction realm has bits and pieces of truth just kind of peppered throughout a lot of them. And some of them have more than others. And so we get a movie like Wonder Woman. And it's very interesting, like you said, you start doing a little research on who was Wonder Woman. Is this just some, they're just making these movies to entertain us and that's all it is, just kind of an action movie? Or is there maybe some more truth, just like all these movies before, kind of hidden beneath all the action? And again, just like all these other Marvel movies with the hammer of Thor, and you wonder who that was, and you find out who Zeus is, and you try to scratch your head and you find out, you say, well, who is Zeus? Is that real, or is that just a myth? Well, very similar to that, in looking at Wonder Woman, you start to look through these Sumerian records of who these gods were. And, and you look at also the Greek gods, and we have to be clear, all of these gods share the exact same traits. So if you wanted to find out who these gods are, you would simply just look at the traits that they are showing during stories of them throughout various places in the world, and you can pin down their various names, because every different, like the Romans had their own various names for them based on things like planets, and then all these different cultures had other names based on them, and that was a very easy way to confuse us. Because think about it, all of this kind of the illusion of us, the history that's been manufactured, has been based on us not having the ability to put anything together.
Right.
So if you have already a mix of languages that are spread all across the world that nobody can talk to anybody, like back when it talks about how language was then spread across the world. Also, on the same note, if you have gods in every culture that have different names, then nobody's going to be able to figure out that they're connected and that they're real. It was a clever way to do it. So in this example, we're looking at Wonder Woman that just came out, and we start looking at this goddess whose name was Ishtar Inanna, and you have to say, well, who was that? Well, if you go back to the Sumerians, are the most advanced, earliest civilization we know of, and you look at when they spoke about Inanna, you can see that she was the daughter of Zeus. So automatic, and she actually says that in the movie. She says, I wasn't born, I was created from Zeus.
Right.
And so then you look who Zeus was, right? Yeah. Who was Zeus? And you say, oh, it's Enlil, which meant Lord of the Air. And so all these gods and all these things that we think are just kind of an entertaining thing, which they are at the same time, right? They entertain most of the masses who can never put any of it together. But for those who are paying attention, you begin to realize that these are just the pantheons, stories of the gods, of the Anunnaki gods of history. And it becomes very real, doesn't it, Jay and Rex?
Let me jump in real quick too, just to add to what you said, and also at the beginning about how the Anunnaki, whatever this dynasty is, whoever these people are, whether they're from Earth or from another planet, or whether they are interdimensional, whatever. Here is another comparison of Greek mythos, which the Greek mythos adopted their stories from the Egyptians, supposedly. Supposedly, the Egyptians adopted their stories from the Sumerians. I am going to add something to that, though. With the research that I have been doing into the Book of the Dead and the petroglyphs and the technologies that are in Egypt, like the Great Pyramid of Cheops, not the some of the more modern pyramids that are not nearly as advanced, but the Great Pyramid, the Pyramid of Cheops, the way that it was built and the way that it is still standing today, in my opinion, is at least 12,000 years old. At least 12,000.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
To add to that, why would then, if you look at the most modern scholars, say that you can take the writings back to approximately 3,500 BC in the pyramids? And those are the oldest writings in the Book of the Dead.
Right.
So if that's the case, then and if these Sumerian texts, which I have been diving very deep into, I've read quite a bit of it. And I think that I'm to the point now where I can have a good conversation with other people that might be, you know, scholars in that field. Now, they surely know more than me, but I could have a good conversation with them about it. So, and with the information that I've researched into the Gnostic texts, into the Abrahamic texts, you know, the Hebrew texts, and even the Vedas, I think that there's a strong connecting point in virtually all of these texts. And with that being said, where am I going with this? Maybe some of these Egyptian petroglyphs are being rated at only 5,500 years old. Maybe they're far older than that, and maybe they predate some of the Sumerian stuff. Because if you look at these petroglyphs, and if you look at the headdresses and the different symbols and the different technologies that these Egyptian petroglyphs portray, so far above and beyond and advanced and much more scientific, yet at the same time symbolic. But if you read these Sumerian texts, they're like cosmic soap operas, man.
Right.
And the Egyptian texts are far more scientific, and the hermetics that are abound within that, I think, are more powerful. So which came first, the chicken or the egg? Who made who? If some of these texts, the Egyptian Book of the Dead or some of these petroglyphs predate the Sumerian stuff, then that changes another point of history. So what does that mean? Well, Ra, Osiris, Isis.
Right.
You know, you look at even going to Starbucks and picking up a cup of coffee. Well, Isis, you know, in my opinion, I think Starbucks coffee is putrid. I mean, it's uniform all across the board.
Chocolate chip cookies are really good, though, bro.
Okay, I mean, and maybe they are, you know, and that's awesome. That's just my opinion. I'm sure there's people that love Starbucks and don't mind spending $7-8 for, you know, a triple latte, and they call them ventes. They're large ones, which they should call grande. Vente means 20, so a 20 ounce would be the medium. And, you know, it's just this whole, anyway, that doesn't really matter. I'm divagating. You get my point. So yes, there is history abound and mythos of the Sumerian texts, of the Egyptian texts, of the Greek mythology. It's abundant. It's throughout not only the courthouse, if you go in DC, but also in Hollywood. Absolutely.
Well, so let me just pick up from that. And then Matt, you can see what you and I talked about off air. So guys, so first off, Rex, I agree with that. I think if we go into like Helena Blavatsky, Madame Blavatsky, and we read, you know, her famous text, you know, that many people, including our good friend, you know, what was the guy's name? The guy that summons all the Lucifer, the originator, what's his name? My brain's melted, like I said.
No, that's okay. No, it's all right. It's
the guy from the early 20th century. The guy from the early 20th century.
You're talking about Pike?
No, not Pike. The guy after him, the guy that summons everything.
Crowley?
Aleister Crowley.
Yeah.
So, what I was going to say is that there's an awesome book called and I'll put it in the group right now for everybody listening. I'm putting the link right here. And this actually was given to me from somebody in the Decoders of Truth. I forget his name. But so it's a book from Manly Hall, What the Ancient Wisdom Disciples, or What the Ancient Wisdom Expects of Its Disciples. And in the book, it's a 72-page pamphlet. It literally has a section, I think it's page 45. I'm going to send it to you guys tonight. It literally says, Manly Hall literally admits it, just openly admits it. It says all mythology is, Greek, Roman, and Norse mythology is the story of when the Anunnaki walked on earth among men. Okay. Now he doesn't call them the Anunnaki, but he phrases them as like the demigods or the Titans or whatever they were. But to go back to your point, my belief is
the Titans were pre-Anunnaki.
So my belief is that I don't think that's true. My belief is that the story is so blown up that what you said is right. It does go way back. I think that the time of Atlantis or the time of Lemuria, and it was most likely Atlantis because Atlantis was known as the Golden Age. I think this is when all of this stuff was really happening. And then we had, you know, Plato and Aristotle and all these great, you know, philosophers, you know, of 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, assuming they really were 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, had this stuff decoded to them through text.
And they were studying Egyptian knowledge, and that's really
so my guess is that Egyptian is even before mythology for sure, but even after the time of Atlantis, right? Because the Emerald Tablets tell us that when everything got destroyed, when the Dark Brothers destroyed everything, that Thoth left, and that's where he went. He went to Egypt.
Yes, he went to Egypt to then establish
the land of Chem, right?
Yeah,
the land of Chem, and then they built the temples, which were the pyramids, and then there's all kinds of other stuff. So who knows how far back it goes? But I totally agree with you, Rex. I mean, the Sumerians are not most ancient culture. I mean, that was probably the second or third go around, but they're definitely not the most ancient culture. There was a lot of history that predates.
I want to
Sumerians
add something real quick if I can, just for a second, because the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which I find fascinating, which I think there's just a ton of, it's a gourmet buffet of knowledge. It's a plethora of intel that resonates at the highest levels with me, or many. I don't know about the highest levels, but I can certainly say it has taken me to another level. And since then, as bizarre as this sounds, birds have been, ever since I've really been reading these Emerald Tablets of Thoth, these birds have been following me around like, Cinderella gets followed around and stuff. I'm like, man, where's my missing shoe? It's crazy, dude. But anyway, so, maybe my vibration's just at a little bit of a different frequency, but where am I going with this? Where did these Emerald Tablets of Thoth originate? They seem too modern to me. Like they've taken knowledge of ancient texts and kind of compiled it, but it seems so recent. And the way the words rhyme, even the way that the words rhyme and stuff, it just on an English level, how would something being so ancient in a different language, how would that rhyme in today's current language?
Because of this. Where did they come from? Well, if we look at where Doriel, who was a pyramid priest,
right?
That's a very interesting thing you got to look into, is that these pyramid priests are still around today.
Yeah, he's a mystery school sect. Yeah.
It's still the same thing from ancient days where they protect this knowledge. Anyway, that's a whole nother side.
You're 100% right, Matt.
So Doriel, part of this whole having permission to and then guidance to go find these emerald tablets. Okay, that's how this happened. They traveled down to Mexico, to the Aztec, and Thoth talks about how, that was his most sacred sites. So he buried them in the largest, or one of the pyramids of the suns. And so underneath there, and we don't know where exactly that was found, but Doriel found or went and obtained the emerald tablets, and then literally translated them and had to bring them back.
But Matt, let's make
it clear in English though.
But let's hold on though. Let's make it clear. He didn't find anything. Okay, this mystery sect of these mystery priests, whatever you want to call them, these guys have been around since the beginning. That book that I just put there, What the Ancient Wisdom Expects of Its Disciples, that's literally talking about these beings, and they're human, and how they transfer the knowledge, and how the mystery schools have, become the secret societies, and they've interwoven, and how they keep
like Yale and Harvard.
And Rex, you always talk about numerology, right? Like if you're one of these people, and they're obviously amongst us to this very day, we know that right now, and they're probably no one that we think they are. But these people could walk out into Washington, D.C., or anywhere where we have ancient, architecture, and they could tell you a story of all those symbols that would blow all of our minds completely out the window, because we don't even understand half of the symbols. We believe we do. We've had people encode them for us and tell us what they mean, but do we really know, unless you're one of those ancient wisdom initiates and one of these people, these keepers of the flame, how are you going to really know what it says? I mean, it's all designed, it's occultic, it's all designed to keep the sheep from knowing what it means.
Yeah, and this is important to remember. Almost the first 14 founding fathers of the United States were Freemasons. And of course, Freemasons were part of one of these secret societies, where that's why there's an obelisk in Washington, D.C. And now there's the question that we were just asking. Why have they also kept it from the general populace? Why wasn't Washington, George Washington running down the streets, shaking a bell and screaming
telling us about the Anunnaki, right?
Even though you can read about stories of Washington where in Valley Forge, where they were about to lose the war, where he literally had an amazing interaction with
intervention. Yeah, there was intervention
where it changed the entire timeline of how they were going to fight, and they ended up actually winning the war because of that. So all these strange things happen, and these Freemasons, these founding fathers, they have all this vast knowledge, and yet, even with what we consider to be, the best of men, and which they are, they're very great men. So how come they didn't tell anybody?
Right.
Because they realized that people, especially at that time, things are a lot different now with the internet and all the capability we have. But back then, people wouldn't have been able to handle it.
No,
they weren't. They wouldn't even been able to tell them.
And these men are also two of the best. And there were some women. I know they don't tell us that, but there were men and women, and they swore oaths And they also took their bodies and their minds to levels. I mean, if you read that book, What the Ancient Wisdom, they talk about what was expected of an initiate. And I mean, these people had to meditate for 17 to 18 hours a day. They would, be without food and water for fucking 2 months, 3 months. I mean, it's crazy. No, very few people, even in today's day and age, of the most highest training caliber, I think, could ever even pass to be pushed into the level where you would need to become an initiate, an actual member. And Rex, you always talk about this, and you've interviewed so many people in quote unquote secret societies and Freemasons. They don't know anything.
Because what happened, we got to make something clear. When you drive down the road, like in New England, I live in Maine, I see signs all over the place because we have such a strong history of the Grand Masons here. So when you look, we have to look at the Freemasons and say, well, what happened? Are these old men still meeting in these buildings and they're talking about the Anunnaki? No, because it's been completely corrupted and dumbed down where they don't have none of that information exists in.
So Matt, good question for you, Rex. You can answer this. So has it been purposely dumbed down, and who has it been purposely dumbed down by?
You want to take that? Okay. I just did a show with Rex recently. His channel called Global Cataclysms and the End of the Golden Age of Civilization. It talked about how there were these cataclysms that occurred on Earth. You can look at ice core samples and all these things, woolly mammoths, flash freezing from climate change, all these things occurring where disasters happened, and all of our advanced knowledge was like wiped off the planet. And the same dates you get from ice cores also match the dates you get from Plato, talking about when Atlantis was destroyed. And so there's all these geologic correlations we can look at what really happened and when. And so when those disasters occurred, when we look at these gods like Zeus, Enlil, with the hatred towards mankind, and these various things you can learn about in the Sumerian cuneiform tablets, yet you read about how he then decided to not allow humanity to ever know the truth of what had happened, because it was so bad, it was so painful and destructive that they wanted us to never know the truth. Right. So you look at a point when after the floodwaters receded and the world started to get rebuilt again, they were very careful to not allow what had occurred to get out into the general population. Of course, people used to actually know a lot more way back when, during the Crowley days, and when they were still practicing, the Enochian magic and all those things, and we've actually lost all that.
Absolutely.
So now here we go.
Yeah,
not there, and not on my YouTube either. But they have basically, it's this idea where it's almost complete amnesia of everything that's occurred in our past, and they've really jumped all over the fact that they could control history from every aspect of this.
Well, you could also actually say in a lot of ways too that technology and transhumanism and everything that's been going on, the quote unquote what the globalists have wanted now in the last 25 years, is actually just clouding it even further, right? Because now they can control and manipulate data to the point where, as Rex always talks about, Gerald used to talk about. And by the way, guys, everybody who's watching, we tried to get Gerald on the show today. Gerald's taking a technological time off. He is basically detuning himself from all.
He has no internet, so he can't even be on if he wants.
He's completely away from all of this, so God bless him. He's a smart man. I wish I was with him right now, but so he's not here on the show. But just to continue with that, there is much more control. As crazy as it seems, because of all this technology and all this data and all this access that we have, there's even more control in the mainstream, as Rex has pointed out a million times. I mean, literally, through vaccinations, through politics, through religion, through debt currency or debt slavery or all this. There's just so much more control mechanisms now today for them to continue the party line. So it takes people like us, Decoders of Truth, Leap Project, and people who are becoming aware and seeking a better route or a better destiny. It takes people like us to really move away from the mainstream. And as you guys know, we're not here to talk about the mainstream right now, but it's mind-blowing. What you guys just said, to me, it makes it just seem much more easier for them to cloud everything because of the control.
Can I jump in and just on a different topic that I would like to give my reasoning why? A moment ago, I said that I feel that the Titans are the engineers of the engineers, the parents of the Anunnaki. Well, the ancient ones that they are referred to sometimes.
So I agree with you if that's what you're going with it, by the way, because there's some giant master builder race, right? That's
because on Atlantis, the Titans actually were fighting the Olympians, and of course the Titans lost to the Olympians, and and you look at who the Olympians were, and that was controlled by Zeus.
Go ahead, Rex. Go ahead.
Bingo. Well, and I just wanted to say, and I love your passion, man. This is awesome. It's like, so anyway, where am I going with this? The Titans, and you look at Titan, the moon of one of the moons of Saturn that looks very Earth-like. And you look at those strange moons around Titan, like Iapetus and Mimas and Pan, and they very much look like these artificially constructed ships or moons. Like they're built with tetrahedron truss technology with literally octagon panels, these enormous panels, and that's how they built them, like giant Death Stars. And they literally mimic the Death Stars in the Star Wars trilogy. So once again, it's art mimicking reality, reality mimicking art.
Isn't that amazing?
Like a CERN, type
coincidence.
Yeah, it could be. You look at the 12-mile high, 12-mile wide ridge, right, that goes up and around the entire circumference of Iapetus and Mimas, or at least of Iapetus, I'm sorry. And that looks like a CERN-like technology. So maybe CERN, and here's another connection, you guys, CERN, Shiva. There is a specific weapon that Shiva gave in the Vedas, a cosmic destroyer that was far stronger than nuclear weapons. It was actually something that could destroy time and matter. And then they've got a image of Shiva, or not an image, but a statue of Shiva the Destroyer in the courtyard of the CERN facility. And, that's another connection that I put together. CERN, ever since the beginning, I've thought is some type of technology. Sure, it's finding the God particle, but what it is also doing is it can manipulate time itself. It can create black holes. And by manipulating time, the way that it does that, if it uses so much energy to find the God particle, a quantum level particle, by doing so, putting so much energy into one source, that changes the entire fabric of time. That causes a effect that you would see if you threw a pebble into the ocean or into some water. You see that ripple effect. That's what it does. That's where the Mandela effect is coming from. And if you have a machine that can change time via the quantum level, literally manipulate the fabric of time, they find that point, that vibrational frequency that can be manipulated. That is the most powerful weapon that there is. So once again, in the Vedas, several thousand years old, in India, they're talking about technologies that we're using now.
Exactly.
It's absolutely correct. It's all connecting there. So yeah,
it's like going full circle, isn't it?
It's all, hello, full circle. And on top of that, I got freaked out today because in the Book of the Dead, it was chapter 15, spell 15. Ra is labeled as a cat with a knife cutting the cyclical, perpetual snake eating its own tail. That was a very frightening petroglyph that I saw today in the Book of the Dead.
It's amazing where things are all around you. I love it. I was just in a church actually yesterday, and I saw there's a glass window that said Saint John on it, and it was a dragon inside of like a gold chalice. It's like all of these hidden symbols are kind of just all over the place, and if you don't really know where to look, you don't know what to find on that.
Amazing, really amazing.
I want to mention you talked about the moon thing. I love it. And you talk about CERN too. It's definitely, when you start researching, you find that it seems that the Anunnaki are the master builders. That's why we have so many massive structures and so many things that have we lost in the past. And there's a lot of evidence to point that our actual moon has been maybe manufactured and altered to where.
What if that's what caused the flood, Matt? What if bringing the moon in via Anunnaki caused the flood? And that's why there's giant maskins on the moon, which have been labeled as gravitational thrusters that even NASA can't explain why they're there.
Well, the Ancient Aliens just did an episode on that, Rex. I mean, we already know it's an artificial satellite. They've already admitted to us, unless that's a psyop too, which I don't think it is.
No, the moon is an artificial satellite.
Right.
And it's their observation post to just monitor and
that makes the most sense, Rex. And then you also have the holes on the moon, we know it's obviously positioned perfectly in position, right? So it's also there, all those holes and that Swiss cheese aspect of it. And the reason it's shallow, hollow is
shallow and hollow.
Yeah. Well, to protect us, right, from debris.
Yeah,
You know,
that's why it's full of pockmarks. And
exactly.
Yet
I mean, is it Nibiru? Is it you know, is it all the planets in the constellation of Nibiru or the Dark Star or whatever you want to call it, Wormwood, or is it just the you know, the asteroid belt or the debris that's flowing through the universe from when they blew up you know, whatever the planet was? I mean, there's a million different names for it, but I mean, you know, it's probably both.
Let's talk about, let's talk about Nibiru for a minute, because I've been reading, once again, various Sumerian scriptures that talk about Nibiru that have been translated by multiple Oxford scholars. And, you know, you can have the links directly on leakproject.com. You can see this. So it's not just one person translating, it's various scholars. And the Oxford University did a great job that actually they leave the symbols. So if you want to learn how to decipher them yourself, there's a lot of scribes on there that haven't been translated into English yet. You can learn how to do it yourself. So you can really decode the information yourself, so you don't have to say, well, I learned it from Mr. Zachariah Sitchin, or I learned it from Mr. Brown. You can say, I learned it myself, you know, and then you can go as deep as you want to go. But where was I going with that?
The planet Nibiru. Yeah.
Help me out, Matt. Where was I going with that?
Nibiru. What were you going to say
Nibiru.
about Nibiru?
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, so Nibiru.
We're all going to die.
Nibiru.
We'll be fine.
There's a lot of scribes that talk about Nibiru and that talk about, you know, coming from Nibiru and what it's like on Nibiru. But I haven't been able to find something that says where Nibiru is yet. So is it a spaceship? Is it a city on Earth? Or is it a city from another planet? Because I haven't found the actual data to show exactly what Nibiru is, except for it's a location, but not where it is.
Because I think the reason for that, and the reason why all the pyramids are, nothing has any influence or talks about Nibiru, nothing does. And they all talk about Orion and Sirius and all these places. I think it's just because of its elliptical orbit, and maybe also because of the fact that they're just something part of something much bigger, that maybe they're not even important enough to even have a location.
Actually, Matt, stay right there, because let's be honest. Let's go back to what you just said. Why are the Anunnaki and Nibiru so removed from all of our conversations? Like, you can't even use the word Anunnaki when you're spell checking. It never corrects. So whoever is controlling us, which is them, we know that. Okay, in whatever direction or whatever way they're doing it, they've just removed themselves from the conversation. Is it done? Is it by design? Of course.
They made the terms so that they're a joke, so that if anybody wants to bring them up, they're automatically seen as kind of ridiculous.
It's all by design.
Polluted terms: alien, God,
yes.
Anunnaki, Nibiru. They're all these polluted terms that we're not allowed to say because we've been subconsciously trained to laugh and giggle at them, even though they're the very thing that actually tells us the truth. I mean, look at the word Anunnaki. If you mention Anunnaki in a lot of forums, still in a lot of places, people will like, look at this situation or something like that.
Right.
Whereas if they learn Anunnaki simply just means those who from heaven came to earth in Sumerian,
right.
You kind of look like an idiot when you're trying to pretend that that's all fake. Just go look at the most ancient writings we have, and just go look at what they called the gods.
I'll just, I'll give credit to Gerald. I mean, I've read all of Sitchin's stuff. I've read Gerald's stuff. I've read Michael Tellinger. I've read all these people that have, gone out on a limb and risked their careers. No one in the university system anymore will talk about it because obviously, it's the kiss of death. But, I'll give Gerald a lot of credit because based on my decoding, I know Rex now is on our side. I know Matt agrees with me. I mean, there's just no possible way that you can't tell me that Gerald's not even correct when he says they're calling the shots right now.
They've been they've been manipulating.
They're literally in control of our government, and this segues right to where I want to go with this. And I know we all have various.
And I want to talk about that actually too, Jay.
Yes, I know we all have various viewpoints. Okay, but let me just say this right now, and I'm not going to say whose side is on because some very smart people in the Decoders of Truth have wrote in on my post the other day. And they said, that right now that for all we know, Trump is being puppeted by both sides of the warring Anunnaki clans. And if you don't know the mythos at this point, then, you need to do some more homework. But we have the EA Enki clan versus the Enlil clan. They may be switching sides. They may be, on one side versus the other. But the only thing I want to say is like this. I just want to make this my Trump comment. And then you guys can, talk about this and do whatever you want with this. Trump is trying to pull the United States. Okay, and let's do backstory. The United States for the last 100 years has been the policeman of the world. Okay, ever since the the League of Nations was formed in 1938 or whatever it was, 42 or whatever. They looked at us as the superpower. We're the policemen of the world. And so all of a sudden, here we are in 2017. We're the most advanced society still on the planet, more so than China by far. Even though China has more people and they have more money, they're not as advanced. But at the end of the day, he's trying to pull us out, meaning us as an individual country or nation or society, out of all these quote unquote globalist, centrist things, whatever they are. And so my take is that this is the Anunnaki clan, action. This is somebody, whether it's a Leo or Enki or both of them or whatever, trying to basically say, okay, America is going back to the Atlantis, the new Atlantis as it was founded by Francis Bacon, and you mentioned the founding fathers. And we're not going to be a part of all of this, quote unquote, globalism, everybody's for everybody or stuff. So that's my take. And when I look at it from that perspective, based on all the things Gerald said, it makes a lot of sense. Now I don't know who's on whose side. I used to think that Enki was puppeteering Trump. I wanted to say that Trump was, part of the good guys. He seems to be part of the good guys. He seems to want to take down the pedophiles. He's obviously anti-Hillary. He's anti-globalist. But I don't know. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts?
Okay, first let's just take all emotion on how we personally feel about Trump out. I just want to speak on a higher level on the rulers of our world. I like to call it.
Sure.
The more control we think we have, the less we actually have. Any candidate that tries to come in that's actually honest never ever makes it to the end. That's the truth. Kennedy was the last actual honest president who was then taken out. By the way, Putin just did an interview with Megyn Kelly where
I saw it.
That the United States was cohorting to assassinate Kennedy right in that. And he said all these other great things, which I loved. But basically what we're looking at is a world that's trying to become a global world, which is good. Not a global government, a global world where people are all connected. That's right. Very good. But yeah, you have this United States with a lot of older workers and people who are very disgruntled because a lot of people who have come into the country illegal or whatever have taken their jobs. So Trump has come in to basically fill that niche of saying, I'm going to fight for your jobs back again. We're going to make America great again. But it's a trick because it's bringing back false nationalism. And what false nationalism does is it promotes the idea that you then go to war because people will then fight for their country regardless of the interests of anyone else. And they'll blindly send people off to then die for that location. I'm all for America being great, but not at the expense of the rest of the world suffering. Because let's look at one thing. I consider America for the last 50, 60 years to be nothing more than a modern Roman Empire who, controlled by the eagle of Ninurta, has simply just used presidents as just puppets.
We're not the good guys. I mean,
to conquer the resources of all the less fortunate countries in the world,
without a doubt,
take all of them and then manipulate the people of that country, which I'm part of, to then make us believe that that's fine and that we should just keep taking in our blood diamonds and ignoring all the things that are happening.
Right.
But what I'm trying to say is this. Trump is simply just a businessman who came in and was then wanted opportunity to become famous. And I feel now that he's being completely controlled by Ninurta, because this is important. When you're trying to figure out what Anunnaki gods are controlling what place, remember, all you have to do is look at their traits. Anything you see that's being manifested in this third dimension is simply just the representation of what they're like. So if the god who's controlling the United States with the eagle for the last 50 plus years has been a god of war control and kind of domination, and I see Ninurta not wanting to let go of power. That's what we're going to talk about, the changing of powers as well. Ninurta not wanting to let go of power in the United States with the strongest military in the world, yet with a dollar currency that's worth nothing, that's about to collapse. I see the United States as kind of the large military manipulator to force the rest of the world to do what it wants based on the fact that they have the greatest military in the whole planet.
Can I have your dollars?
You might need to. I'm just gonna have to invest in gold and silver, I think, in the future.
Man, I mean, here's the thing though, if dollars aren't worth anything, I'll take all of yours. because I can still go buy plenty of gold with those dollars right now, man. That's the thing. You got to remember that. I love you, brother, but when people say the dollar isn't worth anything, yeah, it is. You can go buy something with it right now, and our perception of that dollar is a big part of what keeps it afloat. Hopefully.
That's right.
Now you can say, nah, it's just the people at the very top levels, and hey, maybe it is, but it's a fiat currency, and at least if we have faith in the dollar in the sense that, it's worth something, you can go to the store and buy something with it.
Yeah,
so
but
you got to remember our words, man. Watch your words, brother.
I'm serious when I say the dollar is worth nothing. And let me back that up, Rex.
Well, hold on. Let me talk now, please. When people say continually that the dollar is, like, for example, I heard Mr. Kaiser once, "Oh, the dollar's worth nothing, man. Go out in the streets and throw them all on the ground. And that's what the doctors are most afraid of." I'm like, all right, I'll be out there. I'll pick up all those dollar bills right now. There's been times when I've had, previously when I went out and bought a bunch of silver. And then the silver value went down like virtually immediately after I bought it by quite a bit. I shouldn't have bought as high as I did. Not a big deal. I mean, I didn't lose a bunch of money, and I actually sold it at a pretty decent time. But I was thinking to myself, wow, this silver right now, I'm not going to be able to go to the store and trade a $20 silver coin for probably anything more than $1 worth of product, because it's $1 silver coin. So when there's so many people out there that are falling into the dollar isn't worth anything, the dollar isn't worth anything, they say that and they say that and they say that. That to me is like feeding the system that wants to destroy the system. So
Rex,
that's all that I wanted to say in that effect.
Let me explain what I was going to say.
Hold on, Matt. Go ahead. Rex, it's like Teddy from Rounders. Pay the man his money.
Where's my $2, man? Remember that the John Cusack film from the 80s where the pizza, not the pizza guy, but the newspaper kid on his bike, he wanted his $2 and he like traveled the world to get his $2. Anyway, I'm divagating. Sorry, Matt. We should talk about him.
Okay. What I want to explain is what we have to think about is what actually has real value, and that's been what's been manipulated the whole time. Now, a lot of these crises we have had, where we have these big recessions and all these various things, because these banks are over budgeting all this money that they don't really have, right? And then it crashes and all these things happen. But what I meant to say is, Rex, if you look at all these various countries around the world, in places where they actually have vaults full of various things that actually have value, as in, if you were to actually determine something that had value based on rarity and for what you could use it for, especially in terms of what the Anunnaki gods consider real value, and dollars are not real value to them. That's why they have all these vaults full of gold everywhere. Anyway, I digress. The point I'm trying to make is this: the Federal Reserve in the United States is where our dollars come from, and then Fort Knox is where we hold our gold, right?
Supposedly.
Okay, supposedly. Now, the basis on how our dollar has value is based on the fact that it can be backed up with gold. That's actually how things get determined if they have value or not. If a country has, like China right now has the most amount of gold in the entire world. So if a situation like in the future, which I believe is going to happen at some point soon, when you have a global collapse of different paper currencies, countries like China are going to probably end up emerging as a global superpower because they have vast reserves of actual metals like gold and silver and various things like that. Whereas in the United States, we know that the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, they control the United States just through owning all of their money. Like the Federal Reserve is owned by—
You don't think they're full of gold in their vaults from the fiat currency that they control?
I think that they've removed all the gold from a lot of the places that we think have gold, and it's no longer here anymore.
But when you say they've removed it, where has it gone? The Anunnaki have taken it?
I mean, you look at a Nibiru passive every 3,600 years.
That would make sense. I don't agree with you, though, about China. I keep hearing all these people say that China is more powerful than the United States.
Go look at how much gold China has, Jay.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter.
Listen, it doesn't. I just read a book. I'm not here to argue with you guys. I just read a book about China. China is so near collapse as a country. It cannot sustain itself. It's overburdened. It has many more issues than we have in the United States. It does have more people, and you're right, Matt. They do have more money. But they don't have sustainability. Their society is not going to hold up. I mean, this is just my belief based on the book that I just read by a very brilliant thinker. But I think that what you're going, Matt, I think that we're all agreeing. I think that we have an unsustainable economic system. It's based on fiat currency. It's based on debt slavery. It's the original Sumerian money magic system.
Exactly.
It's essentially spinning around. The elites are moving the chips, whether it's gold or cash or whatever it is, shekels, lira, whatever. It's all nonsense. And at some point, there has to be some form of collateralization to sustain the blips that are in the computers. I mean, it's the same thing in the stock market. I mean, everything is high frequency algorithmic trading. It's blips, and it's like you're on one side or the other. But I mean, I don't know where we're going with this, but I think that I want to get Rex's opinion, because Matt shared his opinion. I mean, I think Matt's somewhat right because he made a really good point. But who is controlling most of the globalists? So let me just set it up. If we have the United States as the, manifest destiny, enslaving force, like Matt said, his great book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, talking about how the United States goes into all these third and fourth world countries and enslaves them.
Yeah.
And that's been going on.
Smart guy.
Yeah. Amazing guy, right? It's going on. Have you interviewed him?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So you can talk about him in a second. But so anyways, last 60 or 70 years, we've been enslaving everybody.
Exactly.
But now, and this is where I think you're wrong, Matt. I mean, we can disagree. We can agree to disagree. But now I think that Trump is trying to end that. I think he's trying to pull us out so that we're just this, non-hegemonous state. We're just this independent state. He doesn't want to be the superpower, the police of the world, which, as you know, is brainwashed because we're not the police of the world. We're just the enslaver. We're the debt enslavers. So wherever's going, I want your opinion, Matt, Rex. Matt shared his. I mean, is it the Anunnaki warring? Is Putin and the Chinese aligned against, the United States and Israel and England? I mean, how do you see the chess pieces?
That's a great question, certainly. And I will say this. I think that as far as the gold situation, the U.S. gets the gold. And wherever it goes from there, I don't know. But I think of what happened in Yemen. And, we got to go into Yemen because the ruler has suppressed his people and he was worth billions of dollars in gold. And when there is remember China a couple years ago, 2015, when they devalued their currency 3 days in a row. And then the third day that they did it, all of a sudden, boom, yep. There's the rod of God or something took out a huge portion of this industrial area. Several blocks of, and the official story was it was a chemical explosion from the warehouse there. Okay.
Just like when they took the towers down, Rex, here in this country. Remember, $7 trillion disappeared the day before.
That's
Poof.
right.
Poof.
So,
as far as the gold, whoever has the gold, and don't get me wrong, China is a force to be reckoned with. And with all the people there, then you have more mouths to feed. You have more resources.
Right.
I agree with that.
You have a lean, mean fighting machine. If you've got a country of 15 million people that are very efficient and smart and know what they're doing and don't have to rely on a system to keep them afloat in the industrialized world. We're 300 million strong here, but think about how many of us would really make it through multiple situations again and again and again that would compound amongst each other. You think about how difficult it is just to go out hiking for a few days in the middle of nowhere with, your camping gear, and think about how
zombies.
Imagine what happens if an SHTF scenario really goes down. Really think about that for a minute.
An EMP, we're eating each other. News. 3 days we're eating each other.
Isn't it? What I find very interesting is these things that pop up when you look, like in the fact that the Federal Reserve is owned by these families, and the head family, Rothschild, still determines the daily price of gold.
Absolutely.
To me, that is mind-blowingly crazy incredible, because in this day and age, why is some elite family that has nothing to do with gold in terms of they're not like the head of the geological society, you know what I mean? They're just this family that's
because they love you.
They still determine the daily price of gold. And it's just so telling to me.
Matt, that's proof. That's proof to your book. That's proof to your book. And by the way, guys, again, please support, Matt's book, The Illusion of Us. If you're watching this, and we have a lot of people watching this, if you haven't read The Illusion of Us, you have to read it. It's absolutely a mind-blowing book. Everyone should read it. It's actually a quick read. It's not even 200 pages long. It's an amazing book. Okay. I'll put a link to it, or Matt, put a link to it from Amazon if you can in the translation here. But I think that's proof right there, and we can go anywhere we want with this. I'm still going to hold Rex to his answer. I want to understand Rex's view of the chess pieces because it's so complex. But I really do believe that's proof that there are ruling families of Anunnaki descendancy or genetic tweaking that are still calling the shots here. I mean, I think that's literally proof. But again, and this perfect for Rex.
Nothing's changed really, right?
Yeah, I mean, but so in the current power structure, right, we have Russia, China, we have the BRICS countries, we have European Union, and we have the United States. Who, and what? If we're just looking at Anunnaki players, who's controlling what?
Rex, go ahead. Unless I have some thoughts on that.
Sure. Yeah, you go ahead. That's fine.
What I see in terms of the research that I've done is these representations here. I want to be clear, the Anunnaki are not all just here watching and waiting and interacting with all of us. I think most of them leave. They leave during these passes. Remember, 3,600 years for us is a lot less for them.
So according to the LERM document, there's 280 of them still here.
And there's a lot of them. And so what I see is, I mean, they obviously can't walk around. It would be up. So there are these representatives that represent them on certain levels. And right. If you look at one of there's two main representatives I see on this planet. The Queen, which is the representative of the political side of the world politics, not any particular country. The Queen is this ancient bloodline that's always been representing this. And how bizarre is it, right? This advanced culture, England, as advanced as we are, still has a queen. It's like the old ways just never went away. And she represents the political side in London, in the financial side. And then on the other side, you have the Pope, which represents the spiritual side of controlling, or the religious and spiritual side of controlling us in Rome. So you have these two major players that kind of control the whole game. And they're kind of the ones that determine, what gets said and what doesn't get said. And it's very interesting that the Pope has a very large telescope that they have watching at all times, waiting for their great masters to come back. It's amazing that the Pope has.
I like how you said the Pope has a very large telescope.
Yeah, and he's got the mitre hat, right? He wears the mitre hat, which is, if you look at the fish suits that are represented by Enki and all these stories, like with the Dogon, and it blows your mind to see that they're just representing the same thing all along, and the Queen is still the Queen, and really not a lot's changed, and except for the fact that we kind of are in this illusion of not realizing any of it's real, which is kind of incredible to think about.
Go ahead, Rex.
So it's interesting. When you think about the possibilities, they're definitely endless. Now, what you did say, I think you kind of answered one of your own questions there, Matt, when you brought up how the gold value, if that's 100% legit, and I'm sure there's a lot of truth to it, but I don't know if that's the only variable about the value of gold, but the fact that they influence a large portion of the gold, then you might say, wow, well, didn't the Anunnaki come here for gold?
That's the whole point.
Came here for food and for other things, not just gold. I mean, if you have an opportunity, a bounty, a chest full of different elements and minerals and just amazing things that you can use, they're like, well, we just want the gold, forget everything else. And even if you read the Sumerian text, when it talks about how the Anunnaki manipulated the black-headed people to basically be their slaves, well, they did it for their, to be like their butlers and their assistants and not just, get gold. Yes. What else you need? Oh, yes. So, and I think it's interesting as well, because if the Rothschilds have a big influence in the gold, when you look at some of the elder Rothschilds and the shape of their heads being cone head-like shaped, and you have ancient Egyptians like Akhenaten that had the
Homo capensis.
Oh, yeah. And you've got Merlin the Mage, and you've got the cone-headed hats on the wizards, and then you even have people that do weird things to their heads to get extra brain power, supposedly. Well,
the cone-headed skull they just found in Morocco.
Yeah, there you go.
Just found that.
So you got Morocco. So with that being said, Why is that? Well, there's certain bloodlines that have specific DNA that can be manipulated via the Anunnaki influence, via frequency, via technology that they have harnessed, that they have encompassed, and now they are able to use other various technologies that we have created ourselves. And if you watch the, certain films where, for example, this is a spoiler alert, ladies and gentlemen, Wonder Woman, I'll give you 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, Ares, the main nemesis in Wonder Woman, is basically somebody you would never guess. And he's the one orchestrating the entire war. So once Wonder Woman, she's going after Ares, and everybody thinks Wonder Woman's crazy. They think that she needs to go after the generals and other people, but she knows that it's just that one person. So and that Ares says, hey, look, guess what? You guys did it to yourselves. It's your fault. You're the ones that made it. I just whispered in your ear. And that reminds me of the Serpent Archive.
That's awesome.
Tablets of Thoth. Right there. They are, whatever they are, whoever they are, whatever it is using technology against people, not for people.
That's
in
right.
The overall scheme of things.
I cannot agree with any statement in this podcast more than that. And I'll actually take that to say, and I know all you guys agree with me, but social media is the most powerful control mechanism that they now have. Because they control the narrative at all times. Literally.
That's all it is. You're right. You're exactly right, Rex. Them introducing technology was them giving us certain things at certain moments so that they could monitor us, because they knew we were waking up. I mean, you look at the Mayans, they knew certain times where we reached certain points in space where our vibrational frequency would raise and our consciousness would change, right? So they knew all these timing things. So what do they have to do? They have to lay down the grounds, the means, so that when we're in that time, not only they can dumb us down with all the things that they've done, but they can also monitor so they can find out exactly what's happening with the population to know if they need to do different steps or different measures to keep us all asleep. Like right now, there's someone sitting, in some dark office somewhere watching this being like,
listening to us,
guys. Just no one's going to believe.
They got computers that can do it. Hold on. You know what? They got computers that can do it. They don't need to do it. They don't need to pay somebody $8,000 plus benefits to spy on these silly conversations. They can pay a computer, $3,000 to build it and then let it go. And then it spies on hundreds of thousands of people at the same time. I mean, supercomputers calculating 7 quadrillion floating points per second. Then you take into account 7 billion people. These supercomputers, just one of these supercomputers currently that's running on silicone-based chips can calculate over 1 million scenarios per person per second at any given time. Combine that with some type of sim technology, and then influence here's another thing too, you guys, global surveillance via nanotech. Imagine this. Now, this is just a conspiracy, of course. The chemical trails in the atmosphere, the stratospheric aerosol injections that use certain bariums, certain elements, that is absolutely proven. These elements can then get lodged into people's bodies and can blanket the body, can get into the bloodstream. So the person will have a specific, not fingerprint, but something like a fingerprint based upon all the elements that are in their body. A specific machine will pick that up. It will register and link that. It can then therefore track that person at any given time, combined with all the other nanoparticulates and Wi-Fi technologies. They have Wi-Fi technologies that can scan you in your house with a dishwasher that's
very disruptive to us.
On every telephone.
This is old school. So with that being said, and there's also a Hewlett-Packard program called the Central Nervous System of the Earth, which was openly discussed in 2009, 2010, 1 trillion transistors around the globe that monitor everything in real time. That is 7 years old. What are they doing to us? Now, to add to that, let's say that our bodies have been inflicted with certain elements that if you take somatics, which is a frequency-based technology, which isn't even a technology, it's just something natural. I mean, look at Tibetan bowls and fill up a wine glass half full of wine or something and hit it.
They're tuning us, Rex. They're tuning us.
Exactly.
You have those certain sounds and those vibrations change the elements into certain patterns and certain shapes. So what is a brilliant way for the government to control people without them even knowing it? Spray the world with the nanoparticulates, use certain transmitters and emitters to create certain frequencies that change the vibration of somebody's, all the way down to almost, not quite, but very, very low down, not to the quantum level, but extremely, almost the atomic level. So it's manipulating, creating shapes, which therefore change the outcome of people inside of themselves without them even knowing it, manipulating time and matter itself. and we all help create it because we are feeding it.
Isn't that great?
It's spectacular to think like that, but you're right. I mean, if you have all those floating point quadratic equations going on at like infinitesimal every second, they actually do simulate predictable behavior patterns and then put them back, like you said, by tuning us into our conscious frequencies so that so many people, which I would say it's still probably 90% of society, are just living in the matrix, drinking their beer, eating their fast food, hoping to get to the job late, clocking in, out.
They don't even know anything, Jay. Isn't that the sad thing? They don't even know us.
Right. So, but we're not talking about them. We don't care about them. We're in the DOT. We're in the LEAP project. So I want to go back to something you guys just said because you set it up. Both of you set it up perfect. It goes right into our comment about DC Comics Marvel. So who is then, okay, so we know that they're in slavery. Rex just laid it out probably better than in any podcast any of us have ever done all together. So mad props, golf clap. That was amazing.
I paid y'all to say that. You guys are brilliant.
That was amazing.
Thanks, Rex.
But I want to stay right there now because we can really change the frequency from what we just talked about. So we know we're enslaved, but there's some of us here right now on this show and many people watching, and then there'll be hundreds of thousands of people that will watch on the Elite Project that are not enslaved. And we watch this and we're open to this and we're not being tuned. And clearly, very clearly, DC Comics and Marvel in the last 4 years, there are elements of them that are trying to wake us up. They're telling us through riddle, through innuendo, and obviously we can go back a little bit further, right, Matt, with George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and these other guys. They're telling us bits and pieces of the story. So what is really going on? I mean, obviously we're enslaved, but there's elements inside the enslaving, the enslavery or the coding that are trying to say, okay, for those of you who are open to this or in tune to this and not dumbed down, check this out. So what?
You want to take that, Rex, or you got it?
Go ahead, Rex.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Rex.
I'll just say this real quick before I forget because sometimes I do that, live. Actually, we're having discussions. I'm like, oh yeah, pretty bird. So where am I going with this? Yes, I remember back in the day, like early 80s. I remember they had those, not even VHS tapes. They had the smaller
cassettes
you could watch. And I remember watching this cartoon that had the good wizard and the bad wizard, and it was really good. And this they start battling at the end, and so the good wizard would be a mouse, and the bad wizard would turn into a cat. So the good wizard would turn into a dog, and then the bad wizard would turn into a lion. And it got to the point to where the bad wizard, the mean wicked witch, she turned into this dragon, and she was ready to she was this huge dragon. And so the good wizard, he turned into a piece of bacteria. So
you're talking about Sword in the Stone, by the way,
right? And so I think to myself, first of all, I have literally transferred my consciousness before into different animals and beings, as crazy as that sounds. And you can call, okay, it's all in my head. Yeah, it is. It's all in my head. You're in my head. I'm in your head. You're in here. I'm in there. It's as weird as that sounds, but your imagination is very powerful. And take that for what you will. Very good hermeticists and people that practice different mental abilities, transferring consciousness and stuff like that. Well, they can literally tap into the hawk's eyes and see through the hawk's eyes in that bird's eye view because they are the hawk. They have literally learned how to transfer their consciousness via imagination techniques to do that. So these stories that we're taught that have these hermeticists that can do that, these Anunnaki, these demigods, these incredible beings that live physical lives of hundreds of thousands of years and then could transfer their consciousness into another physical body so they didn't have to start over. So they had a step ahead of the game. Well, maybe that's why we forget, so that we have to learn everything all over again, so we can't get to that level, so they keep us suppressed as the Energizer.
That's why they capped us at 120.
So
120 years.
Yeah, I mean, so who knows? But with that being said, I'd like to live 150 years in good health.
120s are
bingo.
max. Yeah.
So with the point of my story is, the moral of the story is the cartoon representing the good wizard, the bad wizard, going all the way up to the dragon, then being the piece of bacteria. Size didn't matter. Well, what if these beings can transfer their consciousness all the way down to the atomic level, where they could be that, or even the proton, the neutron, the electron, bouncing in and out of consciousness, in and out of these physical and mental and astral realms, and be the ball. No, be the ball, be the ball, be the ball, be the ball.
That's really interesting, Rix. And I think they can manipulate a lot more of us than we think. They can give us thoughts. They can give us feelings and intentions. They can, and so we're these bodies here with our own sovereign conscious mind that we think, who's just like an antenna, who's being manipulated either from a bad side because you've allowed yourself to be. You've brought in dark things that allow you to be kind of controlled, or you can be someone who's walking a path of wanting to disclose truth, and maybe they get influenced by helpful things that want their path to progress. And getting back to Jay was talking about, we're talking about all of these movies that are coming out that are blasting us with all this Anunnaki information. And it's very interesting if you look at the correlation of what they almost all are, Marvel and in DC Comics, they're almost all Enlilites. What that means is there's two powerful sides of the family. You know, Enki meaning the Lord of the Earth, and then Enlil meaning the Lord of the Sky. They've always been fighting over how our timeline is going to go on Earth. And they've had sons and daughters each. So they have this timeline underneath them of all these different sons and daughters. And those sons and daughters have always looked up and very inspired by their parents, and they wanted to make them proud and be like them. So in Wonder Woman, you find out Ishtar Inanna, she was the daughter of Zeus Enlil. So she was the goddess of love and fertility, but also the goddess of war, which means a lot of the conflicts that occur, you can look in some of the ancient records of that she was the goddess of that place. Yeah. And allowed destructive forces to occur. The reason why all these Marvel movies are made after embellishing them as heroes, right? Thor, Zeus, and that he's the hero. And then in Wonder Woman, we're looking at Inanna. You never have anyone from Enki's side really in these movies. Very rarely, because what I think is happening is, as we're transitioning to a new time, the cycles that the Anunnaki like to follow are based on a 5,125-year cycle. So if we're entering this new time and we're switching to a new family faction, when you want to end on the idea that those who did terrible tragedy here and turmoil were the heroes, you would like trick humanity into thinking that those who were bad are actually the heroes right before all the stuff's about to hit the fan. And so that way we'll have this kind of mixed up perception of who the good Anunnaki gods are and who they aren't, and who aren't the good Anunnaki gods when the disclosure and they come back, which is right now. I mean, we're talking about the window that we've all tracked with Gerald and all the calculations that we've seen. Is it supposed to be this year or probably by this fall? That we're going to see maybe like a return of something.
That seems what everybody is saying now that's still involved in the talking about Nibiru, that's not like shamed into not talking about it. I mean, dude, at this point, I don't really know at this point. I mean, I'm so focused on my life and like living my life and making people aware. I mean, I feel like I launched the group. Obviously, you guys were instrumental in doing that, and more people come into the group, and we have tons of information for people to research and become aware. But I can't make my family any more aware. They're all living their life. I mean, most people, if Nibiru really is going to show up and it's going to, cause pole shifts and climactic.
I didn't say that. That's, to be clear, I don't think that's.
No, I know you don't believe that. I'm just putting this out there. I'm just saying, and I don't know. I have no clue. I mean, but if it really does show up and it does cause pole shifts or it does cause climactic disturbances, I mean, again, 90% of people on the planet are not going to be ready. And there's nothing anybody can do. And maybe that's just the way that the world is. And that's the course of our record. And that, we start over and we have extinction level events. And maybe we're not. And maybe, the good, ETs, the benevolent people, the benevolent, interdimensional beings, angelic beings, etheric beings, whatever you want to call them, are out there and they're going to prevent it. Maybe it's so far out, from its course this time around that it's not going to cause.
That's what I think is going to happen, Jay.
I mean, but we don't really know. I mean, these are all just theories. Everybody's got theories. I mean, Gerald has been right on the number. We know that the guy from the what was his name from the Naval Observatory, Harrington. We know that Harrington decoded this, he decoded something. He was killed.
He saw it in New Zealand. Yeah.
This was covered up. So there's something out there, you know, whether it like you said, whether it is going to cause the end or it's not going to cause the end, but it's going to cause major upheavals. No one really knows. We're all just theorizing.
Yeah, but Jay, there is some things you can look at to actually figure it out. Like in the fact that during this great flood that's talked about in every major religion, right? The one that happened about 12,000 years ago or so.
Right. The Younger Dryas period. Yeah.
Was a bad Nibiru pass.
Right.
We know that, right? It was a pole shift. It was disaster. That's why everything got reset. Start over again. However, remember, Nibiru's passes are every 3,600 years. So there was another pass in between then already.
Right.
And it's not been written about by any culture, which means there was no disaster and cataclysm on Earth.
Well, I mean, if it was 12,700 years ago, though, it's come by 3 times. I mean, this is like the fourth.
That's what I'm saying is not every pass causes destruction. We got to remember that. And everything that, if you look at everything that's lining up now, and the fact that nothing's happened yet, if this was going to be a bad pass, if you look at geologic records and things that happened in our past, there's always things that happen way out in front of a bad pass. You get asteroids and comets. You get very intense.
Well, we are getting that. I mean,
we are getting mild signs of it.
There was a massive.
Real quick, guys.
Hold on 1 second, Rex. There was a massive asteroid that burned through the sky the other day. Did you guys see that?
If it was massive, we would have.
I mean, it wasn't massive, but it was big enough to cause that naked people saw it with their naked eye.
That was Anunnaki, dude. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I didn't see it, man. That's incredible. I need to look that up.
It was 3 days ago. It was talked about like all the the mainstream news, but the fake news. Fake news.
No wonder I missed it.
but before you jump in, Rex, sure. I just want to say, I don't know, Matt, like you, I've read everything. Obviously, I agree with you. I know that the Anunnaki exist. I know that Nibiru is something. I don't know what it is. I'm so tired of all the disinfo people out there. But I'm ready. I mean, I think it goes back to all what we're saying. If it's at the end or it's not the end, it doesn't matter. What matters is having our soul prepared to understand that, it's about love and peaceful, loving kindness and practicing serving others. That's all that matters. I mean, if you get all consciously caught up in like, oh my God, the end's coming or the end's not coming, and you think you spend one waking thought on either scenario or outcome, that you're wasting your energy. You're like you guys have said, we're all conscious co-creators. Go out and create, help others, serve others, be spiritual, be on the path, don't get caught up into the nonsense of the mainstream. Don't live into that. Yes, you got to feed your family or you got to pay your mortgage payment or make your car payment or whatever you got to do. Whatever you got to do that, do it. Just don't take advantage of people in doing that. We all live in the same system of society. There is the money magic system. We all have to exist in it consciously, consciously or unconsciously. But I don't think it's worth it. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I don't think it's worth wasting one single solitary breath or thought of worry.
I agree.
About the future that you have no control of. Go ahead, Rex.
Oh, that was just great, man. I think you put that in. People spend too much time oftentimes with the macrocosm instead of the microcosm.
Right.
Essentially. And, you have to start somewhere. And I think that's a good point. Now, I just wanted to say about Nibiru, because this is something that just really kind of came to me while we were talking. What if Nibiru is actually, show me the documents that show the 3,600-year cycle. That's what I want to see first. But if the ancient documents, and let's say that's the case, every 3,600 years, what if the cycle, if Nibiru isn't another planet, what if it's some type of cycle in reference to a ritual or some type of almost different dimension? Because you talk about the Sumerian texts, and that's where Nibiru is. The oldest reference we can get to Nibiru is the Sumerian texts, which are at least 7,000 years old, which could be transcripts of texts 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, 200,000. Yeah. Sure, I get it. But with that said, if Nibiru is essentially a ritualistic system where every 3,600 years, Nibiru being a dynasty of Earth or coming out of the Earth, maybe there's something more to it than being another planet. Because even when Ishtar and Nana goes to the netherworld, which I just read about this yesterday. Well, she did so in a fashion that there were gates, there was entryways, there was demons, there was all these different beings and stuff. And she talked about Nibiru also in that text. So maybe we're missing the point on what Nibiru actually is, because I even just connected the dots of the title. Enlil is a title. Now, there is possibly an original Enlil that would make sense, but Enlil is also a title. So we have to know when we use.
There's a lot of riddles, man. A lot of riddles wrapped inside enigmas here.
Rex, really well said. Can I just touch on one thing you said, Jay?
Yeah, of course.
I do agree with something you said. Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like you were just trying to think of things, but what you said actually was really resonates with what I've seen, is that Nibiru, the location, wherever it is, whatever it is, right? Its location is in another dimension than us.
It has to be.
That's
the only
why
thing that makes sense.
Yeah, and I've seen things that say that we're never even going to perceive it going by, because the way that it is, and the way that our perceptions are, and the way that everything's gone on this planet to kind of block what actually is happening. Besides major earthquakes and volcanism and like the global systems all changing, we may not know anything else besides that ever, or until we at least get the truth.
Well, Matt, think of it like this. So I agree with you, obviously. I mean, we talked about this before, but if we know that the Anunnaki are this sixth, and by the way, let me just throw a book out there that I highly recommend. I think you've actually read it, Rex. You and I, we haven't talked in a while, Matt, but The Omniverse by Alfred Weber is absolutely mind-blowing. It talks about all of this. It talks about the seventh and sixth density and how these Anunnaki, etheric, angelic beings, and how they exist and where they're at. But Matt, just to throw into what you just said, if Nibiru, actually, hold on. If the Anunnaki themselves are of this ancient, multi-trillion, billion-year race, and they're so advanced, and they've moved, their conscious levels to...
They no longer need the third dimension, yeah.
So it would make sense, and I would say they're way above that, as Gerald says, that it would make sense that they've also their planet, where they come from, is also moved up.
Yes, that's exactly the point.
Why would they be?
You can't exist there unless the whole planet's like that.
Why would they be existing in a third dimensional density existence when their minds, they're able to remove their mind and their soul or their consciousness out of it? Why would they? It doesn't make sense. So what you said actually, and again, we sound like crazy people when we say this, but that makes the most sense. That's why nobody can see it. That's why all these NASA observers and all these, high-level quark physicists and all these people, they can't see jack shit. And then
did we just solve the $1 trillion question, Jay?
Maybe. And let me throw one.
I want to see something after that. Yeah.
Let me throw one more thing in there. And this is your expertise, Rex. What about CERN? What is CERN's role in all of this? What if, and this goes back to what you and I have been talking about, Rex, with the radiation increasing and the sun not being right and everybody being out in the western part of the United States feeling the intensity of the sun in the last 2 years, which is so mind-blowingly bizarre because it doesn't even make sense. What if CERN has actually moved us? What if we're not even in the same location?
I think CERN moves a lot of things. CERN is a way for the Anunnaki to literally, because the Anunnaki, where they come from, exists in a higher dimension than we are.
Right.
The only way to actually be able to directly influence and communicate through and move whatever they wanted to through us, they would have to literally create a wormhole. And they would have to create a way to bridge that gap. And everything I've seen on CERN, the particle stuff, that's all a smokescreen. They're literally creating their own
wormhole ways
back and forth.
Well, what are your thoughts on that, Rex? I know you've had people talk about CERN on your show many times. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I've even got a close friend that he's in his 90s now. He built tubes, and he has patents on third-gen night vision tubes. And these tubes that he built went into CERN. There's pictures of him in CERN back in the 80s. And he also worked on a program in Dallas, a CERN-like facility in Dallas that was closed down because it stopped getting funding. And in CERN back in the 80s. So what do I think CERN is? Well, I just brought up the fact that Shiva, the beautiful statue of the destroyer in the courthouse, or not the courthouse, but the courtyard of CERN facility, and how I just connected the dot of the cosmic weapons that are described in the Vedas. And one of those weapons, one of the most powerful weapons, being a CERN-like weapon that can manipulate time and matter.
That's right.
Not only the earth, but can destroy the heavens. It says it can destroy the heavens, meaning space, meaning it can mess up the atmosphere in outer space as well. Think about how crazy that is. So with that being said, could it be creating different wormholes to allow these entities through, or these Anunnaki, if they live in a different realm, and change the vibrations? And then you see these rituals that are performed that show these tunnels and these mock sacrifices. And then you get into the serpent archons, which feed off of blood. They show up during blood rituals. You look at global wars. You know, so there's so many dots that connect there. But I do want to add a few things to that. Where has it been the past 100 years? Well, let's start in the early 1900s when Aleister Crowley made contact with Lamb.
Right.
Lamb looks virtually identical
to
the gray. And if you look at your dollar bill, current one.
On the dollar bill,
There's something that looks like Lamb, which looks like a gray.
Yep.
And I think Lamb is actually an Anunnaki. Now, the Anunnaki can also, keep this in mind, they can change, different genetics. So they can they can have the grays, the reptilians, the different types of extraterrestrials that you hear about. Even if you get into Daryl Sims, which has been abducted multiple times, ex-CIA, his family's been abducted. He's pulled microchips out of his body. And
I've actually listened to a couple shows you've had. That guy is mind-blowing, dude.
He is. He says they're all, he thinks that these are all clones. And they're cloned in this giant ship that he says they've got pictures of that are.
Well, that's what the Omniverse talks about too. That the grays are they're bots, they're biobots.
Yes, that's exactly right, guys. Jay,
but their consciousness, they could have. They're sharing consciousness.
Oh yeah, no,
so they are a form of life.
No, they're sentient.
It's a genetic form of life. And when people say artificial intelligence, you got to keep this in mind as well. If you create consciousness, that is not artificial. That would mean that we're artificial, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. We're artificial intelligence. We're the Cylons, if you want to look at it that way. And so, dang it, I lost my train of thought. I was going somewhere with this, and then I started talking about the Cylons. Help me out. Where was I?
Oh, you were talking about grays and how they're biobots and they have consciousness.
Yeah. So, okay, so the dollar bill, the Aleister Crowley ritual to connect with Lamb, and then there's multiple sightings in the 1900s when he starts connecting with Jack Parsons and they start doing the Babylon work.
Right.
Where they want to pull in the Antichrist, where maybe
Hillary Clinton
with CERN, right? So maybe, like you said, they're creating these portals, allowing these entities to transfer through, and in conjunction with everything else around us, you can tell. Like, just look at the chemtrails that have depleted 74% of the atmosphere over the past 10 years. That's even in Rhode Island bill that they're trying to pass right now to create more licensing for geoengineering. So they, think about that. 3/4 of our atmosphere has been destroyed, you guys.
Right.
Whoever is controlling things at the top levels doesn't care about us.
No.
Think about that for a minute.
No.
That's the scariest thing.
It's all geoengineering, Rex. I mean, you've already said it, the stratospheric injections. I mean, listen, nobody disputes this anymore. I mean, obviously it's not allowed to be talked about. Mainstream science isn't allowed to talk about it because you'll lose your academic credential. But we all know what's going on. I mean, if you live in the West Coast and you have vast blue skies and most of the time you don't have a lot of inclement weather, you see it. I mean, I remember when I was in Las Vegas like 6 weeks ago, and it was the most amazing thing I remember I sent you guys pictures. It was crisscross. It's everywhere.
Yeah, it's a global thing.
Yeah,
it's a global agreement upon. People don't like to think about this because it's dark and scary, but the Bilderberg Group is the direct meeting place that these elites
went on last week, right?
Yeah, it was last week. Where they literally discuss all these sinister things and the various disclosure things and all these things. That meeting occurs right in plain sight.
Yeah.
It's so mind-boggling that the Bilderberg meeting is like, it happens every year and people don't even look into it. What really happens at these meetings. But like you said, they are controlling, well, what's our funding going to be on chemtrails this year? What are we going to do on, are we going to move up the GMO manipulation? What about vaccinations? How are they doing? That's what these meetings are. They're these.
Would you like the neuter vaccine? You want the neuter vaccine? It's good for you. It might record the unicorn flu.
Yeah, they're not even really human anymore. They've given up their humanity long ago. To Rex mentioned these dark forces coming in, and that's a very real thing, actually. In the Emerald Tablets, talks about them.
Of course.
They don't really a lot of times have names. They just talk about how the fact that there are these entities that thrive and exist in the lower dimensions, and they use our energy because they don't have that creative ball energy, and they can kind of feed off of it. So it's like it's kind of a mind-boggling thing to consider, the fact that someone could literally be controlled by an entity or a being that's not even themselves, and allow, like Rex was saying, the atmosphere, all these various things, allow these really terrible things to happen to humanity merely because of the fact that they want to keep this game going longer.
Yeah.
And not let this game end.
So guys, there's a lot of people watching in the Decoders of Truth. We're going to shut this thing down in like 5 or 6, 7 minutes, depending on how many questions we get. If you guys have questions right now, please type them in. We'll do our best to answer them. My last point to what you just said, Rex, and also Matt, to echo what you just said. In the book, the Omniverse, and then also in the book about the reptilian, the reptilian agenda by Casson, very, very, very well-researched book that I read earlier in this year, and then I read the Omniverse right after it. And I don't think anything is a coincidence when these books come into my life, but they both kind of set the hierarchy of the negative beings as the Dark Anunnaki, the Reptilians, the Archons, then the Reptilians, then the Greys. So whether or not, because Rex, you said it, and it's so hard to figure out, whether or not the Anunnaki, through their shape-shifting or through their, tweaking our brains, our conscious perception, maybe they're all of them. I don't think so. I do believe, and I think you guys agree with me, I believe the Anunnaki and the Archons are separate entities.
They are.
But then the Reptilians, are the Reptilians really just the Anunnaki becoming reptiles to scare people at times?
Could I say something on the Greys and Reptilians? I would love to. This is such a difficult area. If you look at the serious disclosure, he talks about how a lot of these there's like a manufactured fear that's created around these aliens to scare everybody, and around the idea of being so afraid of what's going to happen with being attacked and all these things. What I've come to maybe realize and look into research is that both reptilians and Greys, whether or not they maybe exist somewhere in the universe, but are maybe a manipulation of some kind of AI tech or whatever that's been created as a way that when people get abducted and when all these things happen, that's what they see.
Right.
They don't see an Anunnaki humanoid. They see this strange, scary thing. And so that's what aliens become. They become this very fearful thing to hide the fact that the Anunnaki are simply just
well, Dr. David Jacobs is the #1 researcher on the planet. Rex, have you had him on your show yet? So Dr. David Jacobs talks about that too, Matt. And
really?
He says, oh yeah, absolutely. No, he says that the construct is they're always either Greys or insectoids. Very rarely do they see reptilians. So you're right. It could be a conscious creation. However, most of the brilliant people who have written about the reptilians say that they are absolutely a species. Gerald talks about the Lacerda files. That's a fascinating thing. If you guys have not seen the Lacerda files, I mean, if it's a fraud, it's the most elaborate fraud I've ever seen. But
maybe the Archons.
I believe the reptilians are a species. They've been here longer than us. I mean, let's face it. We have dinosaurs. We know there's proof of dinosaurs. If the dinosaurs died out hundreds of millions of years ago, why would they have not have evolved to a dinosaur? I mean, to a reptoid, right? Reptilians living in the inner earth. There's all these stories. All these smart people have talked about them. But again, Caston's research says that the reptilians exist. They've been around. They have a planet, the Alpha Dracos. They come from that star system. But whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, there's clearly, negative entities, at war consciously with us. There's a couple questions. Rex, somebody just asked if you're coming to California this summer. Bob,
Probably
what's
not.
up? Okay, so Bob, there you go. He's not coming to California this summer.
Beautiful state, but politics there scare me.
So good question. The guy in Wonder Woman, is Ares actually Marduk, and is it Inanna versus Marduk actually being shown in the movie? I don't know. This is the crazy part. Ares is known as Enlil in a lot of the mythology by encyclopedias, but who knows? They change names so much. Remember, Marduk is the son of Enki, who was originally good, but then turned bad because he's all power. He's corrupting, lusting for all power. He wanted to take over for, the controller of the Anunnaki. What's the main lord of the Anunnaki? Anu.
Yeah.
So who knows? It's a good question. Let me see if there's any other questions here for you guys.
While you're pulling up a question, Jay, just before I forget my train of thought, I think this is an important connection here. And the reason I brought up Daryl Sims is he talked about how he felt that that the reptilians and the Greys and the Nordics are all clones, right? And he says they're cloned in this one ship, and
Very
he thinks
possible.
the fallen angels are running the show.
Pretty interesting.
So if you connect the Anunnaki with the fallen angels, and if you look at the genetic manipulation that's portrayed throughout the petroglyphs and Sumerian art and
very possible
pre-deluge material, well, you know, they were genetic manipulators. They were the engineers.
Yeah.
Like
So why wouldn't they do it, right?
It's very possible, Rex.
Hey, that's exactly the point. What didn't they genetically manipulate? That's the question.
Well, it goes back to the Emerald Tablets, guys, and the Chimeras. I mean, we know that the Anunnaki have been literally playing God and manipulating with every species that was innate and living on Earth before they finally developed us. That we know they screwed with Cro-Magnon, they screwed with Neanderthal. What if them tweaking the Neanderthal was eventually the Coneheads, was the Homo capensis, and they were a race that was on the planet Earth at the same time that we were, and they're just smarter, and they're the ones that have evolved into a lot of the royal families, and obviously they're still the DNA of the Anunnaki. It's all so hard to figure out.
It's exciting too, isn't it?
I mean, if you're into that kind of thing, for us, yes.
Shapeshifters.
Our group, yes.
It's very exciting. The truth, I just want to say one thing. I think the most difficult thing to do on this road is to never limit yourself the possibilities of what the truth is.
I agree. So, Matt, question, are you writing part 2?
Writing part 2? Another book?
Your book. Is there a part 2?
I'm writing the next book. It's called The Stage of Time. Talks about how timelines can be manipulated.
Awesome.
It's going to be definitely something that's right up this alley of our discussion tonight.
Okay, awesome. Rex, give us a summary of what's next for you. What's going on with you right now?
A lot going on. And I've got a 24-hour live event coming up here in August.
Nice.
So hopefully you can make it for that. It's going to be a live show on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/clandestine time lord. And also check out leakproject.com, because not only do I have all the podcasts on there that are on YouTube, but I've also got an option where if you want to listen to the podcasts ad free, or if you want to listen to them streaming, or there's also a premium content section there. So for exclusive members, for like $10 a month, or for $50 for the whole year, you'll get access to exclusive content and almost 900 podcasts downloadable once again. And your contributions definitely help Leak Project stay afloat. I do this at least 12 hours a day. That's not an exaggeration. Sometimes I have to literally physically, somebody has to physically remove me from the garage to actually.
You need air conditioner, Rex.
So Rex, can
Thanks,
you have
guys.
me and Matt? Can you have me and Matt on your live show if we get Gerald and we do an hour together?
You guys better be on the show. I was counting on it. Absolutely.
Starting
To be part of it. Absolutely, man.
I'm in.
Look at those freaking guns, you guys. I mean, whatever supplements Jay has taken, that's working.
Testosterone, 150
Like tree
milligrams a
trunk.
week. Very
Ooh.
cool.
You wrote the guide on it. I would hope.
So anyway, guys, for everybody in the Decoders of Truth, we had a really good group today. I truly appreciate all three of us are privileged to have all of you guys watching. It means a lot to us. Rex is definitely going to upload this to the Leak Project where we'll get massive viewership. My personal opinion, guys, this was a knock it out of the park podcast. What did you guys think?
Some good discussions, for sure.
Really deep stuff.
Rex, I'm really impressed with your knowledge, my friend. You've taken so much that you've gotten in from so many interviews, and you've really put a lot together.
Thanks. I appreciate that. This was a good combo pack. So I'm glad we were able to put this all together. And now people have the opportunity to, just think of the different levels these guys are going to be going on now and bring back to us. And then we're going to be like, wow, how'd you know that? This is great. So thank you.
Final question. Both of you guys are answered. I'm not going to answer it because I don't know. How will we know when Enki or Thoth has truly arrived in the age of Aquarius?
He's here right now.
That's my guess.
They're all here right now.
Thoth is buried. He's buried under the Sphinx area.
No way.
In stasis. Oh yeah, you go read some of it. He's
man.
Yeah, that's where he was. But I think he's here, man. I think too many good things have happened. I think he's battling right now, just like Enki said in the message.
But they do. But that's the idea. When they're in stasis, they just freely travel and use.
Oh no, but that's what I mean. I'm just saying he's out. Mike, I agree with Rex in that he's out of stasis right now, and he is manipulating things to prevent World War III, all the nonsense, But I don't know.
42.
Right.
42.
Right. There you go.
a lot's going to change in the future. I do think that we will know that when they're here. I think there's going to be an appearance. I know as crazy as that might sound, but there's going to be an appearance at some point. I think that the Pope is going to try to turn it around to take world religions and put them around mold them around this aspect so that they don't all collapse.
You're saying that you, and I know what Rex is taking this, but you're saying you believe disclosure is happening soon.
Yes.
Global, like worldwide, or just
some event is going to happen. It might be rolled right up with some kind of a financial collapse, with political collapse. There is going to be some major shakeups within the next 2 years. I would say I'd bet my. Okay,
so under 2 years.
Disclosure, though? What is disclosure to you, Matt?
That's the question. It's not going to come from the government. The government's not going to be like, hey, everyone, let's go over what's really happened. It's going to come from an outside influence that blows everyone wide open, and the government's sitting there with their jaw down. That's what I think is going to happen.